Hello everyone and welcome to the Deeply Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deeply Renegade, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 249. Today is Monday, October 15th, 2018, and I'm glad you could join me today. It has, I'm a little bit brain slagged. I drove all the way back from Kansas, doing all the driving, so whatever. It sounds like my husband's not going to be home for a little while, so I figured I may as well record my it's not like Monday's the midweek here, but get a podcast in before the nonsense, because there's been what have you. It'll work out. It'll be fine. So definitely ended up going to bed to snow last night. The rental car definitely did not have an ice scraper in it. That was lame. It wasn't terrible, we just used his sweatshirt to clean things off, but whoopsies. So, had a really wonderful time at yarn school. It was highly concentrated, spinning fun. This is definitely a retreat for the spinners and the spinners curious of the world, because they will very happily teach you how. So that's interesting. I met a whole lot of awesome people, which was pretty cool. Probably easier not to mention everyone, but what would it be? I'm really glad that my friend Sarah convinced me to go. So it's just what I needed. Well, maybe. I probably didn't need more fiber, but it was all included. Some of it was. So because Sarah ended up driving, we just have fiber hanging out everywhere here. So because Sarah ended up driving all the way there, I decided that it would be fair to drive all the way back and let her knit on the way back. So I did not get very much knitting done today. It was an intense day of driving. We'll pop this back on the needles again. So I found out some very important things about my sweater. A, I will not be running out of yarn. B, I did reach the end of my blue ball, and then I actually had to rip back another row because I did not have enough to get another right side in. But this is where we're at on the sweater. So I did some weighing and soul searching, and I concluded that I in fact did have enough. So I'm going to be doing the edge just in the turquoise. I could change that now. It wouldn't be it would be a big deal. I'm wondering whether or not that would be a good choice. I have plenty of the white. I could duplicate the edging that I did on top here. That might be cute. Whatever. So I just wasted 2 rows, but no big deal. So this is the mini dress pattern by Caddy Melville Ledbetter. I'm knitting it out of Fibra Natura flax in the regatta, turquoise, and silver colorways. And it is a front bottom away from being done. So, and whatever edging I decide to do, which is probably going to be a pair of white rows followed by more turquoise. It'll be fun. So I ended up managing to do almost all of this knitting on the drive up to Kansas. That's a random ball of yarn I didn't cut off. Whatever. It turned out that the short side turned out to be this side, so I ended up having to join the big ball of turquoise on so that I wouldn't use it all. Whatever. Such is life. So I'll probably end up ripping back that row and then repeating this little detail here because it probably needs a little bit of repeating, but it is looking very nice. I should have made the back a bit wider than what I'm going to make the front, so hopefully that'll work out. I will follow the pattern as written for the front. I did not follow the pattern as written for the back. I stashed some increases actually in this side panel, either in, so it starts at one width and now is actually at whatever, a few more stitches wider there, so. Excuse me. I'll drink some of this and hopefully that works. I have I don't know if it's allergies or it's a legitimate cold, but so it's awful when you can't tell the difference because you could do different things depending on what's going on. So it was I definitely have enough yarn. I used about 15 grams of the turquoise and I have more than that left. Way more than that, so I will be fine on yarn usage. I definitely have plenty of the white. And then I have 2 decent sized balls for the front, and the yarn usage should be the same for the front and back, and this little piece here is how much I had left of the other guy, so should be fine. This was a very nice little mindless project to work on, so that looks good. I'm gonna be slightly croaky now, which is annoying. It was I can only drink warm drinks or something. Alright, so the other project that got some work done on was my I have random, I don't even know what's attached here. Oops. Making noises. Pulling stuff out. Random stuff. It's looking pretty positive though. I have my save for later stuff. Oh, it's so trapped. Why is it so trapped? We're better now. I didn't have time to process this. I didn't even make yarn that color. I just picked up some random crazy singles on the floor, who even knows. So, I did a little bit of work on the Sizzle Pop, which is a Leslie Ann Robinson pattern that I'm knitting out of my hand spun in the Quilter's Magic colorway and the Blurple colorway. So I did a little bit on it, not a whole lot. The primary focus of this retreat was spinning, so I spent most of my time doing spinning related things. But it was a good case study in you should use your hand spun because it's fun. And it's just gorgeous. So not a lot of love on this one. I think because it is now cold, it was much more motivating to try to finish a sweater. It was very cold. So there was a lot of time spent in sweaters, which was nice. It's good to be able to wear them. Also, hats was positive. Alright. I guess I will show you the finished yarn first. So, I ended up, or what was it? So, as a part of yarn school, like the first day, you show up, you get your spinning wheel set up, we did introductions, we did dinner, and then there was a decent amount of spinning and that. Hanging out in a circle in the gym. The next day, ended up spending half the day dyeing. Had lunch at an alpaca farm. We came back from the alpaca farm, and then we ended up getting set loose with the drum carders, and were allowed to make as many bats as we felt like with the fiber on the table or fiber that we brought. Unfortunately, the Clems and Clems drum carder was not there. It's magic drum carder. But whatever, such is life. So, I made a couple of bats in the process, and then I decided to immediately spin this one up because I knew it was outside of my normal color comfort zone. So as we were driving to the alpaca farm, I noticed that there was this field, and it had like shades of like pale green and yellow, and then there was like some sort of plant in the field that had turned bright red, and then there was like a little bit of the sky that I threw in there as well. And that's what I tried to do with this guy. It will need a bath. But I made it on the drum carder. Oops, just want to make sure it didn't stop. So I made it on the drum carder. I pulled it through. It turned out that I ended up making two sort of matchy bats, as I had too much or something went weird or whatever. So it's 85 grams, 214 yards, and it's very fluffy and very squishy, so about a DK weight, and it's like a sort of like weak gradient, so there's a little bit of blue sparkle, and some purple and orange, and overall I just was pretty tickled with how I was able to take something I saw in color and then create it with the drum carder, which was cool. And then I spun it long draw in order to maximize the floof. And then when I wasn't paying attention, I'd start doing short draw and then be like, stop! Like, I'm doing long draw. So it was a good case study in sort of what you can create with woolen preps and what to do with that. I enjoyed that very much. And then on Saturday there were way more like spinning demonstrations. Sunday was different spinning demonstrations, and what was it? And then in the afternoon we ended up dyeing more fiber. What was it? On Saturday there was also an indigo vat, so I did stuff with that because I was indigo curious. This was my primary spinning output of yarn school. So this is my combo draft fiber. So this was what I ended up doing the failed no sound video on. So I started with 4 ounces of this crazy blue color that really has more shades than it's showing up on the camera. That's really a purple. Like, that's really a purple too. This is a purple. Whatever. So, I split it in half, I rolled it into some balls, and then I ended up spinning it end to end, and then I flipped the ends, and then discovered that I had sort of swapped the 2 fibers, so whoopsies. I guess that means it'll probably all even out. So, what this means is, next, I'm going to spin this guy separately from this guy, and then apply them together. However, I drafted these two together, so it does have the same colors, but it also has these colors. So it'll be really interesting to see how this comes together. It will probably somewhat line up, implying that I will need to wind it off into a cake in order to apply it. So that's a full 4 ounces of stuff, and then I have 4 ounces left to spin before the project's done, but I will have a finished combo draft stand. So, not too shabby. We also, during fiber prep day, or something, I don't know, maybe it was during the spinning demonstration time, we ended up doing we ended up making faux logs. So we made them with a wooden dowel and top. And so I ended up arranging my faux logs as a gradient. Spun them long draw, as you do, because it's really fun. It's not very useful weight for me, but it is fun. It's nice to be able to make really engaging yarn like this. And then I chain plied it together the wrong way, and I basically had like a little elastic crown on my head, because so silly. Like, as soon as it came off, it's like, oh, I know exactly what happened, and that's why I was being annoyed to chain ply. As you do. So, a little bit later I ended up applying it the right way. So, after I think I'd finished this, then I decided to apply it the right way and fix it. So, it's really short. So I have about like 22 yards of this. So, nothing too crazy. I didn't even take pictures of it on Instagram, so it's not official yet. And this will also get a bath and a good thwack, because it will probably calm down quite a lot, and I will add it to all of my spinning samples. But, holy cow, does it make a fun yarn. So I will need to try faux logging things for fun. And spin all of my little yarn cigars. And I'm not sure what sort of project I want to do for that, but whatever, such is life. So, the other spinning project, it's going to be pretty spinning heavy this week. The other spinning project was I actually started to supported spindle. So this is, like random fiber, just like picked up by root. So this is the Ross Farms Hog Island. It is a rare breed of sheep. It is a roving. It is ridiculously crimpy, and the yarn it makes is ridiculously springy. And it is it's a very short staple, so this ends up making it a pretty good candidate for supported spindling. And it didn't take too long to get started. So I probably need to spin a little bit on this every day, because obviously I have a little bit of fiber on here, but not crazy. And I got to use my little supported spindling bowl that I finally bought. So I'll take off my, you actually like don't do anything to keep it on. It's so weird. So, let's see if I can still keep the magic going. So, you flick it, and then you just start drafting, and then you just keep going like that. And it will sort of like bounce on and off the tip, and you can just sort of wind a little thing on there and just keep going. And just making this very fine, very floofy yarn. And then when it gets a little bit too much, because you end up working like super duper close to the tool as you're doing it. But it's just like so different. But I thought I was going to have so much trouble doing this. Wasn't bad. Like, I know how to draft. I know how to keep a spindle moving. And there you go. That's all you need, apparently. It's very strange to be spinning off the point. The yarn just sort of manages itself. And because I'm spinning it fine, as usual, because it wants to be fine, like the veg is falling out as I draft, and no big deal. So this is going to be a fun little project, and I probably shouldn't spin on it for the 15 minutes of the camera, but whatever, no big deal. So I just sort of spin until I get sort of an arm's length on the cup. And then I just go from there. I think if I was better at this, what I would actually be doing is spinning it, keeping it contained, and then drafting single-handed. Which would make it sort of more long drawing. So I'll have to practice and play around with it a little bit. And then I should butterfly it, but I'm not a very good butterflyer. I probably need to, study my, I should probably study my Abby Frankemont book and figure out the appropriate butterflying method, because it's probably holding back my spindling skills. And if you'd ever taken a class with Abby, you would know that she would probably just laugh at that statement. Or it'd be the case of so, how do I make this better? And she would probably be more accepting of that phrasing. So I will probably be sticking this in my little spinning bag, with my chalice and my base, and I'm just amused that you have this little thing that you just chunk, hold it between your legs. So, but I was impressed. Excuse me. I was impressed with how not hard that was. It was easier than I expected. As you do. So, I don't think there were any other spinning projects. The rest of this will be acquisitions and dyeing. And I can probably start with the dyeing first. And there are various stories associated with that. As you do. It's something's really heavy in here. Maybe I have a whole bag of cough drops. Yes, score. I need a bag of cough drops. Except, okay, it's a good sized bag of cough drops. That's encouraging. Tissues, and okay. It's looking pretty good. So, Adrian of Hello Yarn was our instructor for the Dye Lab and Dye Lab Extension. She also did some of the more advanced spinning demonstrations. What was it? And that woman knows how to work a room. It was a case where I noticed that she was being very conscientious about visiting all of the different groups and talking to everyone and hanging out. And I think this is only because as an engineer, being a little bit socially awkward, that sometimes it's nice to be able to just stay in one place and deal with one group of people. But I do appreciate when I see, I can appreciate when you know someone is doing a good job of moving around. So that was really cool. She is a fly by your seat of the pants sort of dyer. But there's always a reason and a lot of knowledge behind, what would it be, the choices that she makes and what she was telling us to do. And generally you could go to her and be like, this is what I'm thinking, am I there yet? And generally she had all sorts of very interesting ideas of this is sort of the palette that we have, and you could like give her like photo inspiration or here's what I'm looking for, and then she would help guide people to what it was that they really wanted to do, which was cool. I found it to be really interesting experience. Acid dyes, in some way, or what would it be? What's cool about the acid dyes is that it results in different colors than what I can get with food coloring. And what was also really interesting about it was some of the tricks of the trade that I just wasn't aware of at all. So we actually ended up getting a book that sort of went into more detail as like a reference for the future, and mostly I had it open to the first page at the beginning, and then eventually it just got like dye put on it or something like that. I still have it, so I will have to like sit down and think about what's going on. So maybe I'll talk about the crossover project first, and then we can go into the other stuff. And there'll probably be a little bit of acquisitions peppered in this too. So let's talk about drum carding. So, not that it was in any particular order to begin with, but it seems slightly easier to talk about my drum carded bats, and then we can get into the dye stuff as a segue. So I'm going to be pulling these bats out of my bag, but they are my segue. So we shall wait until the segue comes into its fullest. But I have a whole bunch of lily pelts. So, I already talked about one of my drum carded yarns, one of the things that I ended up making on the drum carder, and I will talk about two other things that I made on the drum carder, and then I'll get into the more complicated project. So this was the first thing that I ended up making. It has all sorts of shades of blue. It has a gray base on the bottom. There actually wasn't very much neutral colored fiber on the table. For whatever reason, I ended up sort of slurping it up. This one has like layers of purple, blue, red, a little bit of like black, strikes of yellow, red, other such things. It'll be interesting to spin this up. I probably should spin it up soon, because you shouldn't leave your bats to be... Just use them up. So it will probably create a really fun, marled looking yarn. I just did layer after layer, so I would evenly distribute the colors and layers. So, and then I put a little bit of, I think, some rainbow sparkles, and maybe tencel or bamboo or something like that. So this end, you see more of the layers of blue, and this end is coming off more purples and reds and whites. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I was just making crap up. I think I added some hits of orange in there, but maybe that was the other bat. It's gonna be a surprise to spin. The other bat that I made, I definitely did add some intentional orange to this. I ended up blending this one 3 times. Because it wasn't a magical Clems and Clems drum carder, that may not be always the best choice to blend your bat several times. But this one is definitely up my alley. I'll have to weigh and see how big it is. But it's got some purples and a little bit of orange and yellow, but mostly it's different shades of blue. Every single blue that I could grab a hold of on the table. After a while, they ran out of blue, because there was another person there who was more of a blue hound than I, and just kept making blue bats like a mad woman. It looks like there's a little bit of Shetland base in this one too, so I'm hoping that this makes a really gorgeous yarn as well. And I knew that I was going to like it because it was already, excuse me, already in colors I enjoy. So I ended up, so somewhere where you can't see off camera, I received 4 balls of Corriedale roving that smelled like machine oil at Rhinebeck last year. Whoopsies. They still smell like machine oil. Rinsing them in water didn't help. I really hope soap helps, but it's going to have to become yarn first before I can find this out. It definitely smells like machine oil though. So I received it because the original owner did not like the smell. And I was like, free roving, hoorah. So it ended up being about 11 ounces. There's probably a little bit less because there was a little bit of waste in the process of drum carding it. There certainly are like little neps and stuff in it. I ended up blending it twice. And I actually started off with dyeing the fiber in braids, all with the same shades of color. So, is this just gonna be... It does not appear to be looking quite right on the screen. I can like blow up my face. Not sure entirely how to fix that. So I had burgundy, turquoise, navy, spruce, and probably just a blue. And I ended up squirting it onto the braids in all sorts of crazy patterns. And I ended up getting braids that looked all very different from each other. So that was what the fiber looked like earlier. So the 4 braids turned out really, really different from each other. It would be one thing, so it was pretty thin. It was probably either pin carded or it was just straight up roving. So with all of those colors, I decided that, there was probably some silver too, looking at it. So with those colors, I decided to take them and combine them into a bunch of bats. So I took staple lengths from each braid and then ran it through the drum carder. And then eventually the smallest ball of fiber, because they were uneven sized balls, ran out of it. So then I'd take staple lengths from 3 until I ran out of that. And then I took staple lengths from 2, and then like eventually I got down to 1. So I made 4 bats of just pulling the roving off in order to blend all the colors together. And then I split each bat into quarters, and then I took 4 of those quarters from separate bats and then combined them into one bat that you see here until I got through all of the quarters. So now I have a much more even color. I still can see each distinct color because what was it? Because it wasn't like I had fundamentally changed that. And now I have this even color throughout all of my yarn, which is cool. And so I'll have to figure out how I want to spin these bats, but the goal would probably be something semi-solid, some sort of big juicy shawl. Probably something with, and it's probably going to end up being pretty textured. I noticed with that last round of drum carding that I was getting a lot of neps, so that's why I knew I was sort of pushing it a little bit. I'm not sure why that was the case. I was using Strock Mad Batter for that because it had the deepest tines. But it was also weird because its liquor was like blade. Wasn't really sure about that. It seemed weird. I didn't know if it was like accidentally cutting my fiber or something like that, which would be annoying. So I ended up creating several woolly pelts, and they have all of these pretty jewel tone colors, which I love, and it'll be quite a lot to spin this. Quite a lot of fun to spin this. So I have now figured out a purpose for some fiber that didn't have a purpose yet, because it was white. And now it is not white, and we are happy. So I'm really happy with how it came together, and then I had to like wander around the circle and show people the transformation process, or just having like fiber fall everywhere, to go from what I dyed, which I think was like really pretty, to whatever this, part of the process. I was in a huge hurry dyeing. It turned out that I wouldn't have had a chance to turn them into bats, and since I don't have a drum carder at home, I probably did make the right choice. Dyeing them on Friday, letting them dry, then turning them into bats Saturday night. So that was fine, but whatever. It meant that I was hustling a lot at the end to get everything in. So they have first-timers dye in the morning, and then they have the experienced people dye in the afternoon. And then they keep people together if you know them, so it was the case where there were a couple of experienced people, but mostly it was most of the newbies, so we ended up doing 2 different methods of heating the yarn. The first one we ended up doing was the crock pot, and then the rest were a microwave. And then for the second day of dye lab, I did a crock pot, and then 2 different hand paintings with microwave. So I have to laugh a little bit because it turned out differently than I was expecting, but such is life. So 1 bag of fiber and 2 bags of fiber. 2 bags of fiber. So I have dyed a tremendous amount of wool the past few days, and even some not wool for extra excitement. So, what do I want to talk about first? I even have some goodie bag fiber in here, that's fun. So, I ended up dyeing a bunch of stuff. I ended up getting a door prize. So, that's still it. I need to finish drying. So, let me show you all of the wool I dyed, and then we can segue into other things. So, I ended up dyeing a bunch of 8-ounce things of fiber. They came in really, really small balls. But it was all 8 ounces. And then I ended up braiding them. And some of this was extra stuff too. So, and then I have 8 ounces of silk. Full of nonsense. So, that is so much wool. It is so crazy pants. I don't have room in my stash for all this, but whatever. I'll figure something out. So, I ended up doing this one first. This was done in the crock pot, so it's turned out to be a very tonal jewel tone sort of thing. I ended up just sort of randomly spraying dye whatever. I used 2 different shades of blue and turquoise and fuchsia in this one. but because of how the dye struck, the blues ended up taking a lot longer than the fuchsias to set. So anywhere where I put fuchsia turned this like really cool electric purple color that the camera can't capture. Whatever, such is life. I'll have to take beauty shots of everything I ended up dyeing. This is a humbug Shetland, so it has streaks of white and streaks of brown. And so some of the lighter spots you can still see some of the brown. It comes off, it makes things maybe a little bit more green or yellow, depending on how much dye saturation there was. Some of the, especially because I sort of ran out of dye before the end of the crock pot, and then I didn't really do anything about it. I just sort of used a little bit of water to clean out the rest of my dye things, whereas the other end, the starting end, turned out to be much more vibrant. So, an unintentional gradient due to running low on dye. I could have added more dye. Whatever. So, I made this one first, and then I decided after having fun with that, oh wait, we have like another guy. After having fun with that, I decided I wanted to try to make something that looked like patinaed copper. However, I don't think it turned out to be much more bright than I was expecting. So this had emerald, spruce, and something called Aztec gold, some olive, but I probably needed to have a little bit more turquoise, or ended up sort of over-dyeing everything with blue. I forgot to take this braid up again to sort of do like a light blue all over everything. So it turned out to be much more springy than I was intending. Oh, whatever. So this is probably the more different braid that I ended up dyeing. Then I decided to dye something that had been braided. This wasn't how I had braided it when I dyed it, but I had some of the emerald, more turquoise, a navy blue, and then I think some silver, and this guy here. And this is a merino tencel. So the tencel seems like a little bit crunchy afterwards and sort of transparent. So we'll see how this ends up spinning. It definitely has a very different look to it. Hard to go wrong with a merino fiber though. And I'm really happy with how this guy ended up turning out. It turned out quite pretty. And then interesting how there is some purple in this. I don't know if that was from the silver or not. But love turquoise. Then what I ended up doing was I had the silver, turquoise, and navy left over from that one, and so I ended up dyeing this one. So this fiber is, or what is it? My copper one is Fin Sheep, and then this one here is Kent Romney. So this would be more similar to my fleece up there. So it is Romney lamb. So it has a much longer staple. I think this one also, I ended up adding like a silver turquoise to it. So in places where the silver was, it looks sort of like lilac-y and purple, even though I didn't explicitly put purple in. So this one is maybe outside of my normal color zone, and there's like a little bit of bright green in places, which is a mystery to me, but whatever. But I think it ended up turning out really pretty overall. I wasn't quite, like, it took a while to figure out that this was actually the one that I had dyed. Because I couldn't remember what I did or how it turned out. And then I hustled and dyed all of these as quick as I could because I was running out of time. So the second session of Dye Lab, we ended up getting 2 fibers. And now I'm like blanking on what they are. I believe that this is a Falkland, and this one was a Shetland. So, I did this one in the crock pot again, and I meticulously measured out dye. I carefully lined up the bottles. I wanted to do a blue to silver gradient, but I added the dye in the wrong order, and so what I ended up getting instead was a tonal blue with like shots of gray in it. And then some of it ended up turning out really light. I think anywhere that it was sort of in the center of the pot, it just didn't get as hot. Or the dye didn't seem to strike as fast on it. I don't know. It was really weird. So the gradient totally... Some people made like some really, really gorgeous gradients. But I did not succeed in my design intent here. But I figured it was sort of hard to go wrong. So I think that this was... I think I did this with brilliant blue and then the silver color. So it did not turn out to be a gradient, but whatever, such is life. And then I ended up making this one. So I had intended to leave white in this, and I had picked... And maybe you can see like a little bit of it randomly in places. So I ended up putting together a palette that included the spruce, which I thought was a really gorgeous, very blue, dark, sultry color. Kelly green, navy blue, and then a chestnut color. And so I was like hoping to get something that had like sort of this assy green, a dark green, and then a little bit of brown in it as well. But as I was wrapping it up, like it just sort of like collapsed on me, and like there was dye everywhere, and it just got totally whatever. It was just a hot mess, and it took a couple of tries to actually get it wrapped up the way I wanted it to. So what I have going on here is mostly green fiber with like lighter and darker patches, and then these like spots of blue thrown in. So I'm really curious how it'll end up spinning up. You can't even see. The brown maybe ended up making slightly muddier patches in it, I guess. And every so often you can maybe see hints of the super duper assy green I ended up using. And I'm sort of glad it didn't turn out super duper acidy. But I did want white spots, and I totally failed. This is like totally saturated, so whatever. Since it is sort of a darker green color, I think it'll be really gorgeous anyways, and it'll make a huge object when I end up spinning it up. And then, it's just this ridiculous mountain of fiber. It was like I went on a trip to Fiber Mountain. And I brought back oodles of fiber. So I will unbraid this now, because I'm really curious. So I ended up buying this to dye, because I am a silk hound, and I was really curious about how it was going to turn out. So what's interesting is that the shop is... or what is it? So the person who runs Yarn School, Nicole, she like lives in a school with her husband and her daughter, and then they have 2 of these Yarn School retreats every year, and then they have other things going on like the rest of the year. Or so there's like, so what was starting as we were leaving was Felt School, and then there's midden school and cheese school and all sorts of other crazy things. And so the idea being to get together and learn how to have like a little bit of like interloper. So I went to the self-serve area and I picked up this silk, and I do believe that I have succeeded. So I ended up braiding the silk in order to make it more manageable and to add a little bit of resist to it as well. I probably need to like grab like a skein winder. So I ended up pulling out several different blues. So I had a navy blue, a sapphire, the brilliant blue, and turquoise. And so what I ended up doing was I braided the fiber, arranged it, covered it with dye, and then I just kept adding more and more dye, and it just kept soaking it up and up and up. I ended up rinsing this one myself because I was sort of curious how it would turn out. Yeah, it was probably a good idea to get this unwrapped. So I ended up rinsing this myself, and it was like very, very clear when I was done with it, which was cool. So, oops, too much force. So the intention was just to make it as blue as humanly possible, within reason, and then I just kept rearranging it and just splashing more dye on it as I came across things. So that was pretty cool. But because it was braided, and because it was probably a bit more manageable braided anyways, what has now resulted is that I have like all of these like tonal variation in color, sort of like, I think it's shibui dyeing or shibui weaving or something like that. So, I have like really, really saturated colors, but then I also have like variations in tone as well, which I find to be really cool. So I don't know how much of the turquoise ended up sort of coming through in the end because the other blues were so much darker. But I just figured that if I had this, that it would end up with these colors, it would be automatically gorgeous, and I was sort of going for a sure thing with the silk. So I wanted like that really, really saturated color, but then I didn't want it to all be the same tone. And now I will have several pieces. So it was cool. And it was very interesting to dye. Apparently you have to be a bit more careful when dyeing silk because it is more likely to scorch. It is still a protein fiber, so you can dye it with acid dyes without any trouble, which is lovely. And it is like just so much length. This is going to be a pretty intense project. And as you can tell how just sort of pulling it apart is resulting in it sort of coming apart, means what would it be? It's sort of hard to go wrong spinning silk top. And since it is silk top, I think that'll make it very pleasurable to spin in the first place. So I'm looking forward to this one. This was my splurge. It was definitely pricier to go for the mulberry, but I decided that was going to be worth it because I don't think that I would have been able to buy 8 ounces of silk for so little, and then have a chance to make it exactly what I wanted it to be, which was blue. it just soaked up all the dye. So I'm going to have to let this dry because it is still damp. But such is life. I'm not going to be too worried about it. And it just feels so nice on the hands right now. So, that was the finale. That was whatever, the acid dye adventure fun. So the other dyeing that I ended up doing was, I ended up doing some indigo dyeing as well. So, I ended up picking that one was actually broken there, so that was good. So I ended up picking out a merino cashmere nylon, because that seemed to be sort of the weight that I was going for, and I ended up braiding that, and I ended up doing 3 dips. I wish I maybe had done a little bit more, because I think maybe it would have done the resist maybe a little bit differently, but I'm not sure. I didn't end up getting full dye penetration, but I think that ended up being cool, because like the super duper solid indigo skeins just seemed to be not quite as interesting to me as having some variation in color. So I'm glad I ended up doing that. I was sort of going for maybe like different tones of blue, and I would have probably had to dip it more in order to soak it far enough. Like that might have been one of those rare cases where having it in longer would have made it work better. I've been watching indigo dyeing videos and was sort of curious about trying it, and this way I didn't have to dye a ridiculous number of things to make it worth it. I could just dip my one skein and call it good. So that was also something I ended up getting in the self-serve area. And I will show you as soon as I'm done unfurling all of this. So much fiber. It's a little bit scraggly. So, and there's like blue wool also on this too, which will be interesting. It ended up getting rinsed with the stuff, so I guess I'm not surprised. And this really does smell like silk. Oh well. That's what you get when you buy silk. So, here's the silk. And all of its crazy, beautiful majesty. And this will end up, I think, in the end, turning out to be a lighter color than what I've got going on now. But I'm good with that. It's a gorgeous blue. So, here is the indigo skein that I was talking about. It's just a little bit rumpled at the moment. So, here is my indigo skein. So it has, and I will probably have to rinse this guy like a mad fool, because we didn't end up doing a super thorough thing. But you definitely have sort of a transition in the color, in places that got color, in places that are in fact nearly as white as I ended up starting. So I ended up making this into like a little, I chained it together, and then I ended up holding it by the tag and dipping it in. So there's also, I think, a little bit of resist going on where the tag used to be. So I held it by the tag and dipped it in. I did 3 dips, and so that was sort of the shade of blue I ended up getting. Some people ended up having like very, very saturated blue color. But then I ended up getting the variegation of tone. Alright, so I reached an hour. and that's how long that I can record for. So, because I braided it, dye was not able to penetrate all the way through. And what was really funny was, or the coolest part, is you dip it in, you leave it there for about 30 seconds, you pull it out, and you wait for it to turn blue. Because it comes out of the dye bath acid green, and then it very, very quickly oxidizes. And I think because it was superwash merino, it just very quickly turned blue again, did another dip, called it good. So I'm really happy with this sort of blue jeans, blue sort of yarn. I'm really happy that I managed to get the variegation in it, so I have lighter tones and darker tones. And I will probably have to wash this quite a lot more. Because, what was it? Because we didn't do a lot of washing for this guy. So, this was an MCN, so this will be really nice to knit with anyways, because it feels good. Feels good. So, now we're nearly to the end. Excuse me. I ended up buying some things, and I also got things as door prizes. So I've already mentioned two of the things I bought, which was the silk and the MCN, because I wanted to dye them. When I went on a visit to the alpaca farm, I ended up coming across a really cool base, so I decided to get it. So we went to the alpacas of Wildcat Hollow, and they were a pretty short drive from yarn school in Harveyville, and I ended up picking this up because it was 70% baby alpaca, 20% silk, and 10% cashmere. And it sort of has this, it's not my normal color at all, it's actually sort of a salmon pink sort of color, and definitely in this light is looking very pink indeed to me. But I just sort of, I thought that it felt really nice. It was really, what was it? This was some of, like, the best alpaca I've ever felt. And I was really excited about it. So I decided to pick up this skein, which is cool. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with it. It's a light finger rate. It's 437 yards. I'm assuming, I guess it doesn't say a weight, but it's either 100 grams or it is 4 ounces, in which case it may just be a fingering sort of fingering. It definitely has a halo to it, but it doesn't have a prickle to it. It's very, very soft fiber, so I found that to be pretty cool. And I don't know what in this is, what would it be? I guess I'll just start with the door prize because that one's slightly easier. So, nickel dyes as Art Club, and this is hand-dyed comb top. It is a 50/50 merino silk in a highlighter yellow and highlighter green colorway. So this was the door prize I ended up winning. Everybody got a door prize. They laid them out on the table and they pulled our names, and you got to pick your favoriteest thing from what was remaining. Many lucky people got 8-ounce or 1-pound patchwork kits. So I decided that I really love the 50/50. This looks to be a really nice 50/50 base, and decided to go for it. So that was my win. And then I ended up getting Hello Yarn in my goodie bag, and Hello Yarn as a bonus for bringing my own wheel, and ended up buying 2 things of Hello Yarn as a part of the sale. So it was in Adrian's interest because she was flying to sell everything. So once more we ended up like laying out all of the fiber that she had, and then we sort of went around pulling names from a hat. So I got these 2 as a part of pulling names out of the hat. It isn't a super fine merino, but it is more fine than usual merino. And so I got one in plum pie that has like whites, lilacs, purples, and then sort of a chocolatey brown. And then I ended up getting sap to go with the sap I already got. So sap has like a navy blue, sort of a milk chocolate brown, yellows, turquoise, navy, maybe even a little bit of red in it. And then what I ended up also, I think this was my wheel bonus, I ended up getting thawed or something like that. This was, I don't know, it ended up being in there, so we went with it. So this has the lilac, the purple. This one has like orange, yellow, sort of weird thing, orange and yellow and pink combined, sort of peachy tone to it. So that was my pound of Hello Yarn. Half of it coming with my registration, and the other half I ended up purchasing. So this is a demented amount of fiber. I am on Fiber Mountain, and there is so much fiber, it's not even funny. And then I brought back one thing for my husband. They had stroop waffles, so I decided to bring him back a stroop waffle, and I will need to find out where to get more. So someone must sell them somewhere. So this is a truly demented amount of wool. 2 pounds one day, another pound the other day. This pound here, we're up to 4 pounds. And then, yeah. So much wool, so much wool. So I will need to figure out what to do. Like my 8 ounces of silk. It's a lot. But, what would it be? Like, this is definitely, or what would it be? A spinner's delight sort of treat. So, I had a really good time. I enjoyed myself. I can definitely see returning at some point. What would it be? My only complaint was that the meals occurred at, like, way, way later than normal eating times, so that was my only complaint. So it's or what would it be? Like, I don't like having dinner at 9 o'clock. So that was my primary issue with it all. We ended up staying, our room was the 3rd grade classroom of the rural high school. We ended up eating in like the cafeteria area that was the basement. We spent most of our time hanging out in the gymnasium, which also doubled as the auditorium. And we did all of our dyeing in the science lab. So, as you do. Even though most of the things didn't work in the science lab. Oh well. So, I had a lot of fun. It was exactly what I needed. It was really cool to be able to inspire people with my knitting and spinning. It's always pretty awesome, and then you just sort of have this feedback cycle of like, ooh, I want to do that. and then sometimes you succeed. So I definitely see some faux logs in my future. Maybe faux logs with Hello Yarn. I'm not sure. Can definitely see how might be able to combine things together in interesting ways, depending on what's going on. Not sure. It'll be an adventure. You're wondering whether or not I can do some sort of crazy sweater spin with all of the pound of fiber I got from Hello Yarn. Who knows? Let's see. I will not be recording next week. I'm going to be busy holding flowers and wearing a funny dress. So I won't be recording again until the last weekend in October, which will probably be the 27th or the 28th, depending on how things go. And then I'll be skipping another week, as you do. Hopefully it won't be too crazy. I want some boring, like, this weekend was very sort of, aside from being a little bit crazy for driving all day. Whatever. But yeah, no, that was exactly what I needed, but I'm hoping I don't have to travel too much in the near future. Oh well, whatever. Such is life. Back to reality briefly. It's going to be a super short week, so can't get worried about that. So, hopefully I don't catch a proper disgusting cold, but maybe I have. And I look forward to talking to you guys in a few weeks. So, take care, guys. Bye-bye.